Good afternoon, fellow patriots. This is Matt Shea, and welcome to Patriot Radio, broadcasting live from deep inside the heart of the future Liberty State. Sponsored once again by On Fire Ministries in the legacy of Dr. Stan Monteith, bringing you the story behind the story and the news behind the news, where it's not about right or left, it's about right and wrong. It's about our hope not being in man, but in Jesus Christ. About not ending in prayer, but moving to action. Your kingdom come, your will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Father, deliver us from the evil one.
Welcome to Patriot Radio.
Good afternoon, fellow patriots. This is Matt Shea, and today on Patriot Radio, a war with India and Pakistan by this weekend. Also, the blackout in Spain. What's really behind that? What could it have actually meant for Europe? And our guest today, Bill Jasper, talking about how a conclave actually works for the selection of the next pope. Here at Patriot Radio, we want you to have the information before everybody else so you and your family can be prepared for the times that are ahead and the times that are already upon us. But no fear, we were made for this. So, follow us, because war is imminent, at least in that part of the world right now, at Patriot Radio US on Telegram for real-time intelligence analysis and breaking news. Also, you can send us a prayer request at patriotradio.us/prayer so that we can walk with you through this time. Could Israel and Iran still be on the table? Of course, it still could be on the table. But again, no fear, we can walk through these things. And I believe that we are coming into the greatest harvest in the history of the world, so we need to be prepared for it. And part of being prepared for it is through prayer. That brings us now to your wisdom from the Word, coming to us from Philippians chapter 4, verse 13. I can do all things through him who strengthens me. Nevertheless, you have done well to share with me in my difficulty. So yes, God can strengthen us, but it takes community to become solid through these times. In fact, I say about 80% of walking in freedom is walking in community. When we go through difficulties, it's always easier to share in difficulties with others. And as we come into this season, what appears to be war across the world, in the next 2 years particularly, we're going to have to be walking with each other. Put aside the differences, put aside what really are petty, ginned up excuses to not like each other, and become family once again, particularly inside church. And that brings us now to your daily intelligence briefing. Coming to us from the globalist front.
The future is built by us. We have the means to make progress on the global agenda.
As Patrick Wood points out, one of the criticisms of early technocracy was that it had no coherent political strategy. In fact, technocrats in the 1930s and 40s forbade any politician from joining the movement. But now NRX has arisen out of nowhere, has no head or office space, and yet has clear-cut intentions of destroying America's constitutional republic. Well, let's talk about that. What's the difference between a republic and democracy? Democracy comes from the Greek word demokratian, which means people rule or mob rule, where 50.01% can vote away the rights of 49%. In a republic, res publica, the public thing, or the law, our rights come from God, and no matter who's in power, we can never lose those. This neo-reactionary movement, also known as the Dark Enlightenment, believes that democracy is a mistake and that what they're really meaning is a republic, and that equality is not a desirable goal. Those who adhere to it believe that the state should be governed like a company with an imperial and techno-authoritarian president. Practically clandestine, it has already managed to infiltrate some of Trump's populist movement. Now, talk a little bit more about this Dark Enlightenment. A couple of these characters that are part of it, Curtis Yarvin and Nick Land, it really is monarchy by another name. Now, there are 5 types of government. The first is anarchy, or rule by none. The second is a republic, as I mentioned, which is rule of law. The third is democracy, which is rule of the mob. And really, anarchy is never in existence for very long as a transitional form of government because somebody eventually takes power. Democracy really is a transitional form of government because it always implodes on itself. Which leads us to the fourth form of government, which is an oligarchy, ruled by a few, and then the last, monarchy, or rule of one. But monarchies never really exist either because it always takes a few people to rule. So what these people are actually advocating for, establishing turning citizens into users and shareholders of a sovereign corporation and establishing a scientific dictatorship based on technocracy, what they're really advocating for is just another oligarchy, where one person is put forth as the authoritarian leader. And we've held in the United States for a long time that there is no king but Jesus, because again, our rights come from God. So we're seeing an unmasking of the globalist movement in a new form, but really not. And some of it has infected MAGA, but I also don't think that's true either, because I think people are seeing through this, and with media outlets that are spreading the truth, they can never win. But they will try to persecute Christians, which brings us to the next article. Premier League winners Liverpool set to be punished by UK's Football Association after player displays "I belong to Jesus" shirt when scoring a goal in the final game. So interesting that if he got down on the field and laid out a Muslim prayer rug, there probably wouldn't have been such an objection. Why is it always the name of Jesus that sends the French and the British into apoplexy? Interesting that during the Revolutionary War, King George really made fun of those backwoods Bible thumpers. And those backwoods Bible thumpers, because they were moving in righteousness and because they were fighting for liberty on their own ground, whooped the English and didn't do a revolution like the French atheists to be specific, and brought us what we have today, a republic under God. And that's where it's going to stay, and the globalists are, well, more than afraid of that. That brings us now to the China front. Trevor Loudon exposing New Zealand's and Australia's Marxist bent, but specifically some elections coming up in Australia and Albanese's Marxist ties, and warning of Australia's socialist shift should be a warning to everyone that we're seeing the socialists continue to try to take over Western governments. And that means that they would become, whether they would say it publicly or not, allies of China. The Port of Los Angeles, the nation's busiest port, expects a 35% drop in shipping volume next week as the new tariffs start to hit, according to CNBC. Again, that means that jobs are coming back to America and the middle class is being restored. Also, China disputes the claim by President Trump that tariff talks have begun. China's denied the assertion, but President Trump said, hey, late Friday that discussions had begun, and said that they'd actually already talked to them about it. Do we believe the communist Chinese who lie about a lot of things, or do we believe the Trump administration? I guess that's up to you. But I know for me that Trump is intentionally trying to deprive China of the ability to wage war economically. And that economic inability will translate into a physical inability. And if they decide to go to war, which I believe the Chinese have already decided, that they will go to war hamstring, with a hand tied behind their back. And historically, the Chinese really have never stayed together as a people. And so the fact that there are 300 plus million Christians in China, I don't think bodes well for the future of the Communist Party there. If Japan and Korea are not involved, oilers will have to refuel at Guam, Hawaii, or the West Coast. The closing of Red Hill means this problematic as the bulk of Department of Defense fuel reserves are now disappearing in the Central Pacific, increasing distance. Why are they closing a fuel depot in the middle of the Pacific when we need it right now? I have a sneaking suspicion that there either is another plan or Secretary Hegseth doesn't know that. The mass production of China's Corvus Mulberry tank landing barges proceeds apace in a shipyard, also building freighters for a Taiwanese shipping firm. In other words, Taiwan and Taiwanese business owners are literally paying the Chinese shipyard as building the means for the CCP to invade its own country. And there's a picture of that right there. You can see them literally within a tenth of a mile or hundreds of yards of each other. Incredible. Also, the naval and craft infrastructure required for an invasion of Taiwan is exactly what China is building. And there were pundits for years who said, oh, the Chinese are going to play by the rules and they're going to be part of the globalist order. No, they're not. They never were. All the CCP understands and all communists understand is seizing power. In fact, dialectical materialism and Marxism and Leninism, it's all a form of seizing power. And I would argue it's just gangsterism in another form. So, of course, they're going to invade Taiwan because, first of all, they need to save face that any nationalists made it out of China. But secondly, they have to do it because their economy is imploding and so is their demographics. And they're not going to have much time left. War between India and Pakistan could break out in 2 to 4 days. Pakistan's defense minister says the country is on full alert. Also, and interestingly enough, India's Prime Minister Modi gives free hand to Army, Navy, and Air Force. He gave operational freedom to forces to decide on mode, targets, and timing in the aftermath of the terror attack in Kashmir. Forces choose their own target and timing, and terrorists will be completely eliminated. This high-level meeting occurred here yesterday, and it does look like Pakistan and India are headed for war very, very soon, which makes this next thing that came out just before the broadcast. Pakistan's information minister revealed that the country has received confirmed intelligence indicating that India is preparing for a military strike within the next 24 to 36 hours, and emphasized that Pakistan's armed forces are fully prepared to respond decisively, warning of catastrophic consequences if the region devolves in escalation. Now, here's another important thing. If Pakistan feels its existence is being threatened, they will use nuclear weapons. However, if an all-out war does break out between India and Pakistan, Pakistan will be in a very tough spot. India counts the United States, UK, EU, Japan, and Israel among its strong allies. In fact, the Israelis have been shipping arms there to India over the last 72 hours. And Pakistan is backed by China, Turkey, Iran, and Malaysia. Interestingly enough, the war between Russia and Ukraine may have to be put on hold for a little bit because the arms would have to be shifted to another theater, at least from a Chinese and North Korean perspective. Russia, Saudi Arabia, and the UAE remain neutral, but not really. Russia has sold to India and has always been involved in Pakistan in some form or another. So really that's not correct. However, India is seen as the bigger military in the region and very likely would win any direct conflict. The IDF is, and this moves us now to the Middle East front. The IDF is preparing to escalate ground operations in Gaza due to the ongoing deadlock and hostage release talks, so it does look like war is going to ramp up there in Gaza. Also, satellite imagery from April 19th does confirm the continued presence of 6 B-2A Spirit long-range strategic stealth bombers, 6 KC-135 aerial refueling tankers, and the rare sighting of an Ohio-class nuclear-powered cruise missile submarine docked at the base at Diego Garcia. So yes, that theater is still very tense right now, and war with Iran very much still on the table. CNN reports that the U.S. aircraft carrier Harry S. Truman lost an F-18 jet, which fell overboard along with the towing tractor after the aircraft carrier had to take a hard turn to avoid a Houthi projectile. This brings up a whole host of questions. Did the Houthis actually penetrate some of the layers of defense for the aircraft carrier? Yeah, a good question Indeed. And lastly, on the Middle East front, drone footage from the port of Bandar Abbas in southern Iran shows a massive crater as well as immense damage to the port following Saturday's chemical explosion, very likely from sodium perchlorate, which is used for missiles. Now, the question is continuing whether that was sabotage or not. But interestingly enough, in the interior of Iran, there was another explosion at another factory where gunpowder was at least stored. So this raises the specter of Israeli or U.S. intelligence being involved in, well, blocking Iran's ability to launch ballistic missiles. When we come back from the break, some troubling news out of Nigeria. And as we have been seeing with the Russia front, peace is still elusive.
Attention business owners and entrepreneurs, Patriot TV is launching a brand new TV series showcasing American-made products, and your business could be featured. Whether you sell your products online on Etsy or Shopify and dream of reaching millions of viewers on smart TVs like Samsung, Sony, TCL, and LG, or apps like Roku, Android, and Apple TV, this is your chance. We're searching for US-based businesses offering all types of products and services proudly made in the USA. If you've ever wanted to showcase your products on TV like QVC or the Home Shopping Network, now's your opportunity. Support our American economy, grow your business, and be seen by loyal Patriot viewers across the country. Know someone with a business or have a business yourself? Don't miss out. Contact us at supportingpatriots.com today. Be a guest on this new exciting TV series. Let's put your American-made products in the spotlight.
The new Supporting Patriots show on Patriot TV spotlights great Patriot-owned companies and introduces them to Patriot consumers, encouraging them to buy American-made. If you're an America-loving patriot that owns and operates his or her own business, and you have Made in America products or services, you're the perfect candidate to be interviewed on the Supporting Patriots show. If you'd like to be considered for an interview, email us at supportingpatriots@patriot.tv.
ISIS confirms that it has attacked a Christian village in Borneo State, Nigeria, and posts pictures from the massacre. They burned down several homes and the church after killing 20 Nigerian Christians who had gathered for a mourning ceremony after a villager's death. The slaughter there continues with the religion of so-called peace. That brings us now to the Russia front. ISIS. Yeah, well, where were some of the ISIS folks trained? And we keep missing this, but one of the places in 1969 was at Balashika outside of Moscow. And they taught them something specific. That was how to hijack airplanes. And like Ayman al-Zawahiri, Mahmoud Abbas, all Soviet trained. So very interesting that Trump is beginning to realize that maybe Putin is still the KGB guy that, well, he always has been, because he's never renounced his affiliation with the Communist Party. Bloomberg reports that Witkoff pushed for a ceasefire along the front lines in his recent meeting with Putin. And although Putin, at least through other channels, had indicated that might be amenable to freezing the front, has rejected it and demanded Ukraine completely withdraws from the 4 regions Russia has annexed. And he is also asking for some other things, like having Ukraine recognize the Russian language and the Russian Orthodox Church. Now, I've heard people go back and forth on this, but the fact of the matter is the Russian Orthodox Church is an arm of the KGB. I know it's the FSB today, but it is. Its metropolitans were recruited. This is very well documented, and you can read this stuff in the Matroikin archives. Some of it, I think, is in the Venona transcripts. At least the implications are there as well. And you can hear this from some of the Ukrainians that were under the Soviet rule in the underground church. And when the state church broke from the confessing church in 1963, they knew exactly who these Soviet agents were that were in the leadership of the Russian Orthodox Church. So that seems like a non-starter to me. Also, Russia has returned the body of 27-year-old Ukrainian journalist Victoria Roshna, who was kidnapped by Russia while investigating FSB abductions in Zaporozhye 2 years ago. The Russians returned her body, interestingly, without her eyes, brain, and part of her larynx. And they believe that that was removed because of torture. You think? For the first time, France accuses Russia's military intelligence agency, the GRU, of being behind severe cyber attacks against France. They accuse the hacking group Fancy Bear of attacking France's defense, financial, economic sectors several times in 2021. Yeah, there is a lot of cyber warfare going on between a lot of countries, so that should really be of no surprise. Ukrainians have been doing it as well, so has the United States. But I find it interesting right now that the French are trying to flex. Also, Zelensky is rejecting Putin's ceasefire proposal for Victory Day, saying he needs to accept the 30-day ceasefire. So peace remains elusive on the Russia front. Also, emergency service workers carried out 286 rescue operations on Monday to free people trapped inside elevators inside Spain's Madrid region during the nationwide blackout. The question is, was this a weather event or a cyber attack? Also, the UK was hit by unusual power activity hours before the massive blackout in Spain. Morocco was also hit by some of that. And control room staff at the National Energy System operations saw unusual activity on Sunday morning with unexpected power frequency shift. Well, what does that actually mean? First of all, the grid is unstable, and part of that is because Spain closed down its nuclear reactors like Germany did, and some of its coal plants. In addition to that, Poland is saying, we're not going to go down that direction anymore, and just signed a contract with the U.S. for the construction of its first nuclear power plant. The plant will have 3 AP1000 reactors. I think this is in the wake of one of the reports that I saw. I want to share with you that grid frequency across continental Europe plunged to 49.85 hertz, just a hair above the red line collapse threshold. And it appears that Europe was seconds away from a continent-wide blackout. A lot of questions there, but remember, it was predicted that there would be blackouts in the United States and in Europe years ago. I hope this is not something coming to fruition. Also, 2 Muslim migrants set fire to a church in Wales, and yes, that is permissible under Islam. That brings us now to the national front. Canada Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre lost his own seat for election, lost a 50-point lead as the Liberals won in Canada, and, well, that's what happens when you start to attack Trump. This is the 418th anniversary of the first landing and raising of the Cape Henry Cross. If you've never heard about the Cape Henry Cross, it was quite literally where a pastor put a cross up and dedicated the United States, or what would become the United States of America and this continent, to Jesus Christ. Yes, that happened. And yes, this is the anniversary. Also, a huge work by Data Republican and Mike Benz revealing the Global Leadership Coalition, a 30-year-old supergroup made of the biggest USAID-funded NGOs. I find it interesting. Non-governmental organization, yet they receive most of their funding from the government, who lobbied Congress to give themselves, wait for it, more money. Everybody should watch that video and read that article. Trump's first 100 days, well, records in everything. In addition to that, economic indicators, some up, some down. But really what's, I think, the biggest story out of the first 100 days for President Trump is the massive retaliation and obstruction from the judiciary. And interestingly enough, the Trump administration said that it would be willing to arrest a Supreme Court justice, once again, for illegal activity. Serious complications from abortion pills are 22 times higher than the FDA reports, according to a new study. And I think that that bears a lot more research and a lot more information. Now, lastly, we've got some uptick in Marxist and jihadi operations inside the United States. Coming up on May Day, it's kind of an inflection point, May 1st, communist holiday. Revolutionary anarchist groups have been coordinating on direct action campaigns across the region, but also recently, people like Senator Chris Murphy have said, quote, exceptional tactics will be needed against the Trump administration. And Governor Pritzker out of Illinois called for mass mobilization and disruption, adding, quote, these Republicans can never know a moment of peace. So it does look like things are being spun up right now for a summer of violence from the left. In addition to that, it was revealed that a suspected ISIS member was arrested in connection with the Bourbon Street attack in New Orleans, according to Iraqi officials. Remember when that FBI special agent in New Orleans told the world conclusively that it wasn't a terror attack? Well, it appears that it was, in fact, and was coordinated. Also, Ohio State University in Columbus, Ohio, looks like it was being hit with some sort of cyber attack earlier today. I just want to highlight this because cyber attacks probably will become more common in the run-up to not just this summer of violence from the left, but also any sort of war in the Middle East, in Iran, Pakistan, India, and China, Taiwan. And that is the briefing. Remember, the antidote to dependency and socialism is to be a God-fearing, self-reliant, freedom-loving American. Thank you to everybody that is praying for us. And when we come back from the break, Bill Jasper.
Throughout history, the spirit of patriotism has prevailed. The battles may have changed, but the values remain the same. Today, in 2024, we find ourselves at a pivotal moment where the call for unity, freedom, and a better future echoes louder than ever. For more than 10 years, Patriot Mobile has been committed to supporting the values that make our nation great. With affordable plans and reliable nationwide coverage, Patriot Mobile is not just a wireless service. It's a call to action for those who believe in the American dream. Because this year is not just any year, it's the most important year since our nation's founding. Choose a wireless carrier that shares your values. Choose Patriot Mobile.
What do a neurosurgeon, a country artist, and a television and radio host have in common? They all saw the writing on the wall. Big banks sharing your financial information with big government. Join them as owners in Old Glory Bank, the pro-America online bank that protects your privacy, security, and liberty. Invest today at own.oldglorybank.com.
And our guest today is Bill Jasper. We're talking about a subject that everybody is talking about, and I can't think of a better expert than Bill Jasper, the senior editor for the New American Magazine, but also a traditional Catholic himself, talking about the Pope today. Bill, it's great to have you on Patriot Radio once again.
Well, thank you. Always a pleasure to be here, Matt.
So I think the entire world's praying, Catholic or not, that the next Pope is actually Catholic. I mean, this was not a joke this last time around. And there have been various reports out there, but I want to kind of walk through this a little bit methodically. What can people be expecting next in the selection process for the Pope?
Well, that is the big question. What we will expect next is, of course, to have a conclave. And I've been busy on other things, so I haven't seen this morning if there has been a date set on it. I don't believe there has yet. According to the procedures now set up under canon law, they have to, within the next 20 days, after his death, begin the conclave process. So that means all of the cardinals around the world who are eligible, that means all of those who are under 80, who are eligible to vote under the Francis guidelines, need to be in Rome. And as we discussed before we went on the air, Pope Francis, Jorge Bergoglio, has stacked the deck during his pontificate with a lot of people a lot of the prelates who are now cardinals, who are perceived to be very liberal and in his mold. So that portends that we are likely to get a Francis 2.0 in whoever will be that successor.
So let's talk.
We can break that down a little bit. Yeah,
let's talk about votes. You know, we don't all of us understand how this whole process works, but I understand voting, and I think it was a Gateway Pundit article that I mentioned to you earlier, had that 109 out of 135 cardinals had been appointed by Francis. It might not be that high, but what does it actually look like now? And then the follow-up question would be, are some of those that have been appointed by Francis actually going to be his support, supporting this continued progressive change inside the Catholic Church?
Well, again, those are very big questions. No one really knows the answer, even those people who are on the inside. But from just observing things over the last several years with these appointments, he has appointed more than any other pope in recent history, and so a lot of people are expecting that the top tier candidate is his Secretary of State, Pietro Parolin, who is a Francis clone. He doesn't have the charisma and a lot of the personal touch that Francis does, but he is viewed as a Francis devotee. He is very much in favor of all of the left-wing programs that Francis has done. He was the key person as Secretary of State. The Secretary of State is usually the next in line. He's the most visible and most well-known of all of the cardinals. He has a lot of power, and he puts a lot of these people in their various places around the world and is the top advisor to the Pope. He was also the one who most responsible for negotiating Francis's big betrayal of the church in communist China. So he orchestrated the secret agreement, which still hasn't been fully revealed yet to the American people or to any of the Catholics around the world, even to any of the other cardinals. But we do know what has become public is that he allowed the Chinese Communist Party, the CCP, which is the biggest persecutor of Christians in the world, has carried out, for the past century, a zealous, fierce, ferocious persecution of all of Christian churches and Muslims and Jews, and Falun Gong, anyone who gets in the way of the religion of the Communist Party, which is communism, and the cult of Mao, the cult of Xi Jinping, or whomever is in power at the time. So why would the Pope, through his minister, Parolin, Secretary of State, agree to let the Communist Party appoint bishops of their choice from their patriotic Catholic Church, which has always been condemned and not recognized by the Catholic Church prior to Francis. So, and then he selected as his emissary to Beijing to carry out this betrayal one of the most sordid characters in the history of the Church, Cardinal Theodore McCarrick, the predator pedophile who was finally Pope Francis was forced. McCarrick was one of his top buddies, but when it became public, so notorious that he couldn't cover it up, he defrocked Cardinal McCarrick so that he wouldn't be tried in a canon law court.
Wow.
And so that's who Parolin is. And so a lot of people, Vaticanistas, who are watching this and looking for the papabili, who are going to be the top papal candidates, are pointing toward him. And traditionally, that would be considered a top role. But the Communist Chinese agreement is only one of many things that really are dogging Parolin and could keep him out of getting the thing. He still has a lot of power. So a lot of people are looking at, if he gets in a first, if he brings enough momentum in a first ballot, that he could be elected. He needs to get 90 plus 1 he needs to have 2/3 of the cardinals plus one who are voting. And there have been reports that 2 cardinals are not going to be coming. And and many of us are hoping that some of the other cardinals, like Cardinal Burke and Cardinal Sarah, Cardinal Urdu, do not meet some unfortunate accident over the next couple of weeks before the conclave.
And let's bring up a couple of those names. In the conservative circles, there's names that are being floated out there, like Bishop Athanasius Snyder, like you just mentioned, Cardinal Robert Sarah, as maybe a counter that maybe there is a turn inside the church to go back to the foundational beliefs of the Catholic Church. Do you see that actually happening, or is this just they're putting it out there to at least counter maybe this Secretary of State or some other Francis devotee?
Yes. So we have, besides Paroline, we have dozens of other far left, questionably in my mind, whether they are even Catholic, whether they are Christian, because they have rejected so many of the core beliefs of Christianity or have attempted to suppress them and have gone against Catholic moral and doctrinal teachings. So, yes, there are, as you mentioned, Cardinal Sarah. He has, or Sarah, it's pronounced both ways. He is the hope of many people, many Catholics and non-Catholics. He is a very dignified and very genuinely, ardently faithful, devout Catholic. He's a theologian. He's from Africa. So he would be the first Black Pope. He is highly regarded in conservative and traditionalist circles. And until the pontificate of Francis Bergoglio, he was pretty highly regarded in most of the liberal circles as well, because he had distinguished himself over the years in his service in many different ways. And so Cardinal Sarah is a very hopeful potential candidate, but it will probably take going into a second or a third round of voting before there would be a compromise. Historically, and Dr. Taylor Marshall, in his book, Rome, the Eternal City, goes into a number of these conclaves. And in his book, which I have very highly recommended in many of my articles and appearances, is infiltration, which is about the infiltration of the church over the last century and going up to and into Vatican II, how these forces that brought Francis to power, both inside the church and outside the church, because with Francis, there is very good evidence that Barack Obama, Hillary Clinton, George Soros, John Podesta, the CIA and NSA were involved in sabotaging Benedict, forcing him out, and bringing in, along with the St. Gallen Mafia, the pontificate of Pope Francis. And so, as a Catholic, I believe, as do most Catholics, that when we're dealing with a conclave, it is not just an election like our presidential election or gubernatorial elections or whatnot, that God has a hand through the Holy Ghost in the election. That doesn't mean it's always going to produce a good and holy and wise and prudent pope, just as we've seen throughout salvation history in the church, and before that in Israel. God was always operating, and he was operating through the leaders that he has chosen, but a lot of them go astray, whether it's a Judas or a Saul, or even somebody who's the high priest like Aaron, who goes astray and makes the golden calf. but he was still elected by God. And so we know that is a big operational factor. Our prayers affect that because God honors prayers. So all of us who are Catholics are praying, as you said at the beginning, that we will have a Pope who is Catholic. It used to be a joke. Is the Pope Catholic? It's during the pontificate of Francis, it was no longer a joke.
No longer a joke at all. When we come back from the break, more with Bill Jasper on the selection of a new Pope and also what this may mean for the globalist agenda as well.
American business owners, you understand the power of TV. If you have a product that you want to sell to millions of like-minded Americans who value quality, hard work, and supporting the red, white, and blue, supporting Patriots is the perfect place. If you're ready to bring your product to a patriotic audience eager to buy American, then contact us today at supportingpatriots.com and secure your spot on Supporting Patriots. Let's build a stronger economy. When we buy American, we support our future.
I couldn't give anything a higher endorsement.
I would be remiss had I not include Cardio Miracle on my very short list of secrets.
It's the real deal. It's a real product. It's not another supplement.
I'm operating about 6 to 8 hours, and I've noticed that being on this Cardio Miracle has made a huge difference.
Since I started taking Cardio Miracle, about 8 months into it, the benefits have been fantastic.
You know, if I get hungry, then I just have a Cardio Miracle.
Not only is it safe, but it's necessary to take Cardio Miracle to stay well.
This let me sleep. It's filling up more energy, more get up and go. And it's all because of what this company does.
For me as a doctor, Cardio Miracle is a staple.
Cardio Miracle to me is hope in a glass.
To try Cardio Miracle for yourself and get a special fan discount, go to the host page right now and click the link for Cardio Miracle.
We're back with our guest today, Bill Jasper, senior editor of the New American Magazine, talking about the death of Pope Francis and what this may mean coming up. Now, over the last few months, Bill, there were some expressions that came out of the Vatican that weren't even Christian. I mean, let's just not sugarcoat it. All religions can lead to God was probably one of the most heretical statements that came out that I heard personally. And then this synod on synodality, also raising alarm bells throughout the Catholic Church. So if you can, talk a little bit about how the beliefs were shifted under Jorge Bergoglio's pontificate, and is it going to actually shift back? Is there a movement in the Catholic Church to really make sure that it shifts back toward traditional values that the Catholic Church has held for 1,000 years?
Well, again, this is what Catholics all over the world are praying about, and non-Catholics as well, because one does not have to be Catholic to appreciate the immense influence that he has. The Pope, whoever is holding the tiara or who is on the sedalia at that time. So. Yes, we're all praying that the next Pope will move us back to the true Catholic faith, and that he will embrace all of the traditional moral teachings and theology of the Church. And Bishop Athanasius Schneider, whom you mentioned, he is not, of course, a cardinal, so he would not be usually considered as a candidate. However, in the history of the Church, there have been non-cardinals, non-bishops, even non-ordained priests who were ordained after they were selected, were ordained and became Pope. So, I mean, it is a possibility. Bishop Athanasius Schneider would be one of my top choices. He is the auxiliary bishop of Astana, Kazakhstan. And he lived under communism in Russia and Lithuania, and when he and his family were persecuted. And he's just a courageous man. He's a very devout man, a very learned man, and you can see him on a lot of different interviews. He's been very forthright. He's very charitably reproved Pope Francis on a number of occasions, and he's not a vicious flamethrower. But he tells them right. He says, look, this is charity for the love of your soul. You need to do this. And so he says the next pope needs to come out publicly and offer reparations for the blasphemies, the heresy, the many scandalous teachings and expressions of Francis, and set the record straight on what the faith truly is for the faithful and for all of those to whom we want to take the Christian gospel to, so that they know what we truly believe. So he is leading an effort in that regard. And we saw it worldwide a couple of years ago when Pope Francis came out with Fiducia Supplicans. That was the blessing of homosexual couples. And we saw bishops and cardinals all over the world, including many that he had appointed, coming out and condemning, particularly in Africa, some in Latin America, some in Asia, and even some in liberal left Europe and the United States, denouncing that and saying, no, that's absolute heresy. That cannot be. And so that indicates that the wokeism that he was promoting, the subversion that he was promoting, has its limits. And we saw that also with his Amazon summit and his Pachamama scandal, when he had the Amazonian witch doctors bring their Pachamama idol statues to the Vatican garden, and they had a prayer ceremony there. That was totally heretical. Yeah. That scandalized a lot of people, even many of his supporters and his appointees. And so there is a real hope and I think a justified belief that this can be reversed. So in the next couple of weeks, I was at the conclave, not in the conclave, but at the conclave in Rome, right outside of St. Peter's, when when Bergoglio was elected and assumed the name Pope Francis. And I was there on for a number of reasons, one of the main ones being for the conclave, but I was also meeting with some national legislators there on the big mafia KGB case there in Italy at the time. And so I was right below the loggia in St. Peter's when the announcement came. And as you know, these things went on for several days while we were there. So people were coming and going, and just about everybody had left. But something told me that I better stay there. And so I was right in the front row when the announcement came, and was able to get it all on video.
So there's an announcement that's made, and then what color smoke comes out when the Pope is selected?
So when every time they have a ballot, after the ballots are counted, they burn the ballots in a stove right there. They add a chemical to it. If there hasn't been anyone selected yet, they add a chemical that turns the smoke black. And so we saw the black smoke come out. When they elected a pope, they don't put the chemical on it, and paper usually, when it burns, has white smoke, and so then you see the white smoke come out. And so that's what we're going to be waiting for. I'm not going to be going over there this time. I will be, like you and others, observing from afar, remotely.
We're far removed, actually, from Rome right now. So yeah. I want to ask a couple questions as well about a prophecy by Malachi that there would be 112 popes, and Francis was the last one. Well, if one is selected, then that kind of justifies some of the critics of that prophetic word. So what is the thought inside the Catholic Church on that? Is is Francis really the last pope, or was he even a pope? Because I know I've heard that from some as well, that he really wasn't a legitimate pope.
Well, within Catholic circles, including even within conservative and traditional circles, you'll get many opinions on that. There is no official church teaching on the Malachi prophecy. And so that is left up for individual judgment. So you're free as a Catholic to believe or not believe it. Also, in that same vein, if you go to Rome, one of the major stational churches in Rome is St. Paul outside the walls. The big stational churches in Rome are the Lateran, St. John Lateran, which was the official residence of the Pope, an official papal see before St. Peter's was built. Then there's St. Peter's, and then there's Santa Maria Maggiore, St. Mary Major, and St. Paul outside the walls. Those are the four big ones. And St. Paul outside the walls, of course, is where the relics of St. Paul are. And in there, you have portraits up on the right below the ceiling, all around the church, around the nave. There are portraits of the popes, and there is one remaining spot there. And so other people are saying, well, we have room for one more. So there is no official teaching on that. That's the way the church was built, and when they began putting those portraits up there, that's how many spaces they had. But some attribute prophetic significance to that. Again, there's no official teaching in the church on that.
So there would be one more spot open after Francis.
Yes.
Wow. And I haven't heard that before, so that enlightens me as well. Back on Catholic beliefs and just this shift that really needs to happen, not just in the Catholic Church, but in each church I'm seeing right now, each denomination that I'm seeing right now, there really is a fight between, and this is oversimplifying it, between communist supporters and sympathizers, wokeism, and anti-communists. I'm seeing it in not, everything from the Methodists to the Lutherans to even non-denominational churches are having that now, if there is really such a thing. And then also, you kind of alluded to it inside the Catholic Church, this idea that there is a fight for the heart and soul of the church between the woke communist left and the traditional values, the traditional moral teachings of Jesus Christ. How do you think that this is playing out in the Catholic Church right now? I mean, Catholics, is the church growing? What is the sense, the general sentiment?
Well, yeah. So you and I both know we have a mutual friend, Trevor Loudon, and he came out with a video which you've probably shown parts of it on your show. The Enemy Within. One of his Enemy Within goes into the churches, and so yes, this crosses all denominations. All are under demonic attack, but we know that the demons use human agents as well. And so we have communist agents who have infiltrated the church. And then you have those who are useful idiots who are not willful, knowledgeable, witting communist agents, but nevertheless are promoting it because they have been swimming in this septic tank for a long time and have been marinating in this and imbibed in it. So you have it. Pope Francis has pushed forward the Enviro-Leninist agenda, all of the environmental Mother Earth stuff, which we just had yesterday, the Earth Day, the 55th anniversary of Earth Day, which is Lenin's birthday, Vladimir Lenin. And appropriately so, because Enviro-Leninism has become the big religion of many people and many Christians. So many of the churches are dealing with this. They put climate change right up there with salvation of souls. And then you have, of course, with the abortion and all the LGBTQ, LMNOP, transgenderism, whatnot, all of these are being promoted by demonic agents, but also by human agents. And the communists have been in the forefront of this. And so that's why you see in the Catholic Church, there is very good evidence to support the suspicions that one of the reasons that Pope Francis was so friendly toward and helpful toward the communists in his secret agreement is because he has been taking large amounts of money into the Vatican Bank from Beijing. And Dr. Stephen Mosher and others who are Sinologists and Vaticanistas have investigated that and looked into it. Haven't been able to get to the bottom of it yet because of the corruption there. But that is probably a very real likelihood that has been happening. So, in addition to the ideological affinity that Pope Francis had for communism, socialism, we did a cover story which I wrote. Cover story is Pope Francis is the Pope a communist? And that was actually in quotes because BBC asked that, and so did the Associated Press and several others, because a number of the things that he has done with Fidel Castro, with Hugo Chavez, with the Sandinistas, with the communists in Brazil, with China, in Hong Kong, all of the things that he has done explicitly with communists and with those communists who are promoting liberation theology throughout the world, made many secular journalists wonder, is Pope Francis a communist? If so, it would represent the triumph, at least of sorts, that the communist, Dr. Bella Dodd, who was a leader of the Communist Party, she was on the Committee of Nine that did the trial of Earl Browder back in 1940, 45, 46, somewhere in there. And she later left the Communist Party. She converted with Archbishop Fulton J. Sheen, became a Catholic, but she said that when she was in the party, in a leadership position, that they had placed hundreds, in one of her things, she said up to 1,000 priests and seminarians into the Catholic Church.
Yep.
So that would have been a couple of decades before Vatican II, but by Vatican II, there were enough of them in place that they had a profound impact and have been impacting the church ever since.
Bill, absolutely fascinating conversation. I have an anecdotal story. I was in Argentina here a couple of years ago, and I asked several of the locals what they thought, and every single one said, oh yeah, he's a communist, he's a socialist, something along that line. And so it was very well known to the folks that were on the ground there in Argentina. But thank you very much for joining me on Patriot Radio today, Bill. Great interview, and really appreciate you. We'll have you back on again soon. Keep up the fight.
Thank you, Matt. God bless.
Bill Jasper, senior editor of the New American Magazine. This is Matt Shea. Thank you for joining me today on Patriot Radio. May God bless all of you. He is making this generation the greatest one. The awakening is here, and you can see it everywhere if you're paying attention. So keep up the fight.